Welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of The Lock-In. I'm David Lavin. I am joined, as usual, by my fellow Unibet poker ambassador, Dara O'Kearney. Dara, it's been a busy week. I've noticed you grinding the Unibet Spring Championship events every single night. How's it been going for you?
Kind of mixed. I'm kind of there or thereabouts in the high leaderboard, but nowhere in the other ones. So yeah, it's been kind of mixed. I see you were off getting a haircut, which you told me about. Nice, very nice haircut, Dave. Because obviously, of the two of us, you were the one who really needed a haircut.
You usually get told by the people in our comment section. When
I know. I can already foretell half the comments of this are going to be, why the hell hasn't Dara had a haircut yet?
Well, this week we are joined by a very special guest, it must be said. He's had a haircut too, by the looks of things, an esteemed member of the poker community, a legend of poker broadcasting. He now carries not one but two other people in that WSOP main event coverage booth each year. He is the WSOP Circuit event winner, Lon McEachern. Lon, welcome.
Well, hello, gentlemen. How are you? Yes, got the haircut yesterday. Family member does my hair, so I get a good rate and I leave a good tip. And why the hell hasn't Dara had his haircut? Yes, that's what I'm wondering.
Dara's wife's normally on the case, Dara, so you got to give Murray a shout.
Yeah, I think she's already told me that it's scheduled for next week. She's barely seen me the last 2 weeks. She's just come in through that door every so often to bring me food and then disappeared off. So.
Smart woman, and that's why you've been married so long, probably.
What a system you have going there, Dara. It's amazing. It really is. Lon, we wanted to have you on this show right on the heels of your circuit ring victory, but our schedules clashed around that time and we were not able to. But nonetheless, I wanted to give an appropriate amount of love and attention to that result. Can you tell us about that win? And did you play the tournament from inside the ladies' bathroom of the Win, which I believe is tradition now for WSOP commentators?
Well, no, Jamie Kerstetter has, of course, that honor, and just the third wheel in the booth, so she has to play in the bathrooms. I actually got a very comfortable seat with a USB charger, so I'm good. No, it was fun. It was, I said in the post-game interview, and I've noticed that, I see in my first post-game interview, and I have to empathize with players who have won and talk and get banged for, saying crazy things in an interview, because your brain is so blown up at that moment, just minutes after your win. You don't know what you're saying, really. And so the one thing I did mention, I want to clarify, I said it was easy. It felt easy. And I think you guys can relate. You're very good poker players, both of you, I know. But nothing bad really happened. I just took my time. I went in very relaxed. And it just, things fell into place. I was hitting my draws when I needed to. And at the final table, one of the shorter ones, there was some crazy guy who could not miss, and he's getting chipped. And it just, just kind of built to a little pyramid. And I beat a guy heads up whose last name is Norman. So what more could I want,
It's a good feeling. Yeah. Just, I don't want a moment there to go unnoticed. Do you hear that, Jennifer Tilley? Very good player, Lon McEachern just said. Very good player he recognizes me as being. So just want to make that clear for anyone out there.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's not even a full-time player. Don't take her opinion for
it. Well, Dara, this was a seniors event Lon played, a format you've only, of course, very recently been eligible to gain experience in. What adjustments have you learned over the years in those games?
Yeah, it's, I definitely played the first one, or at least the first 20 minutes of the first one really badly. I just played it like a normal tournament, and it's just different. Like, there's far more multi-way pots. Pots can get bloated pre-flop, so you just have to kind of rethink your ranges completely and just think like, well, what hands actually play well multi-way? Like maybe my king jack off, if I open this and 7 people call, I'm not going to like it. So that's one of the adjustments. And then there's post flop adjustments too. Like there are some players who are just very, very stubborn and don't fold, and it can become a very boring nut peddling game. Now, that said, like you said, I only recently turned them, but actually I've been playing them for 7 years now, and they've changed over that time considerably. Like 7 years ago, the standard was, there's no other way to put it, it was dreadful. It was just like playing poker back 20 years ago. Nothing had evolved. Now when I play seniors, they're not noticeably softer than most live tournaments I play. A lot of seniors are studying, they're signing up for training sites, they're watching content, so they have leveled up, and it's become more like a normal tournament recently, at least in my experience. And again, it's obviously a small sample size. Like, I've been playing them for years, but I've probably only played 15 of them. So
I think it probably depends on where you are as well. I mean, in your geographical region. I'm playing out of the Sacramento region, Northern California, Thunder Valley. There not far from Bay 101, we're getting a lot of people up from the Bay Area into Sacramento. JC Tran has certainly, been the #1 figure in the area where I'm playing, and he's no slouch. And so, but I think the seniors actually, like senior golf, the seniors are getting younger every year, and they're bringing that knowledge with them. And then they're forcing the people who aren't playing or working as much. They might be, now playing more poker than work. They're able to study, they're able to enjoy it. So yeah, I think the game's getting tougher. I did go on to, as you mentioned, I went on to Marrakesh to play the World Series circuit there. Very different crowd, where I found out in the main event, 3 aces don't hold up against 4 or 5 of hearts. And then played some run good events this last week, and I cashed twice in one day. So it's up and down, but I think the win that I had, no matter the field, but it was, a decent field. I know the guys, it gives you a certain confidence. It gives you might know the right thing to do most of the time, but sometimes you don't have the courage to do the right thing in the right moment. And I think having run deep, cashed a couple of times, it's given me the confidence to trust, I guess, what I think should happen and pull the trigger, which I think is very difficult at times for a lot of people.
And is that always your default, Lon, is to sort of go back into your shell or be tighter if you're faced with a tricky, close decision?
Yeah, it is. And it goes back to when I first started playing the game, where my goal was to last as long as possible. I kind of thought, oh, this is how you do it. You just last as long as possible and then bust out, just for the money and go home angry. And so in playing these games, and I found in the Run Good series, particularly in the main event, much tougher crowd, and I learned so much. And I'm having to try to live the mantra of the chips you've bought in, your money's gone. The chips are there. The chips are your ammunition. They're your weapon, and they're a viable part of the game. And you shouldn't hoard them. You have to use them, or you will lose them. And this is such a simple way to say it.
That's good advice. One final thing: have you had the opportunity to show your WSOP circuit ring to Norm yet? And what was his reaction?
I haven't seen him in person, but oh yes, I have shown it to him. I sent him a picture of it on my finger, and he said he woke up the next day and somebody else actually had beat me to the punch and sent him a message about it. So loving them. And he didn't believe it at first, and then he started reading some reports, and it was a typical Norman response. And and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of fodder for both me and Jamie, 2 ring winners in the booth, as Dara mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But he's very happy for me. He's always thrilled with my good result, and I love him for it, because whatever the rest of the stuff he says is just to aggrandize himself.
Well,
was that too many syllables for your audience? I didn't know. That wasn't enough.
I liked it. I liked it. Sticking with the topic of WSOP, I noticed how you and Norm are promoting the WSOP free play app at the moment. I think you said you haven't seen him in a while, but I have an image now. Maybe I imagined it of some truly frightening wigs on both of you. Is that?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, that was our. We've been working with the app and with the game for several years, and so we do segments that are within the app called WSOP Academy. And so we went a few years ago. We went down to LA and shot for 4 days, I think, in the studio. All the academy things. It's kind of a primer for how to play poker, what to do, what the mechanics of the game are, and different stuff. And they had to make it interesting, because poker knowledge can be really boring for people who aren't interested into it. But as a full crew, it was a lot of fun. And so this year is the WSOP free to play app 10th anniversary. So they're having us kind of take over their Twitter account and give people free chips and things like that. And I didn't know they brought on this thrill team either. I mean, they brought Vanessa Selps out of retirement, I guess, to be part of it, and Patrick Antonios and Rampage. It's kind of interesting.
Some donkey called Espenjorstad as well, I noticed in that very nice photo as well.
Yeah, but if you don't play heads up, that much, I don't know, it shouldn't be on a team. No. Yeah, it's amazing the lineup they've gotten, and they've done commercials with big Hollywood stars and everything. So yeah, they're all in on this one. Sorry to use that term.
Well, sort of segueing gently away from that, because I guess like this is very much in WSOP's interest, but it's an interest of pretty much every poker operator in the world right now. The US is still fragmented. It's still like there's no real money online poker in most of the states. How do you feel about that, first of all? Because it's been more than a decade now, and I'm imagining even the most pessimistic people probably didn't think it would take this long. And then secondly, as you see it sort of piecemeal coming back, who do you think are the big threats? Who are going to be the big operators in the space?
Well, I think the big names are still the big names. I mean, GG also, I think, overtook Poker Stars as the biggest site online from what I've heard. I haven't looked at numbers. As far as the players are going to be, I think you're going to see a lot of the same. WSOP is going to try to keep expanding, and GG and Poker Stars also. So those are the big players. There are some smaller and, great word, fragmented sites that are here and there, not operating in the gray area as well. But I think, we had great hopes of just kind of bringing all the puzzle pieces together and having the US be one. And California, where I live, especially, is obviously a huge market, a huge economy. And because of the size of the economy, from what I understand, the income that they would be getting, the state would be getting from online poker, is a drop in the bucket. And so there's not that urgency. Though the legislature here is I think pro online poker. The problem is the actors, bad actors, good actors, for many years have been fighting for pieces of the pie, and nobody can come to an agreement. And the legislature is not going to create an online poker site themselves. So bring us something viable, I think they say, and it could work. So I think there's some hope if the racetracks and the Native American tribes and the Poker Stars and GG can all get together, but that hasn't happened so far. So I think we have 7 out of 50 states right now that can do it. So it's a slog, absolutely.
Yeah, Dara, turning to you to pick up on what Lon said there, it does seem at the moment like the big poker operators are all sort of eyes fixed on the prize of getting into the US market. Poker Stars well positioned. GG have been making moves in that regard. Certainly, I've heard rumblings that Party Poker were moving some resources from other areas of the company in that direction as well. We, of course, know Unibet would value getting in there as well. Like Lon touched on it there, but it's almost like the regulator or the license giver would be picking winners in that situation. And, I'm just interested to know, firstly, who you'd like to see get in there and would offer the best games and the best options for people. But also, do you think it'll be opened up more generally, or do you think it will be a case of maybe 3 people get licenses or whatever it is?
Yeah, I do think it's so far it seems to indicate that it's definitely the latter, just a certain number of licenses in each state. And then you are picking obviously winners, but they're not alone in that. Some European countries have also gone that route, and it's unfortunate. Like you said, nobody thought it would last this long. To be honest, I kind of did, because I remember reading about prohibition, and within a few months of prohibition, they pretty much knew it was a serious mistake. That all they had done was they had kickstarted certain criminal activities, and they really brought that to the fore. But it still took 10 years to effectively undo it. So that was something they realized straight away was a mistake. And still, the way American legislative processes work, which are very slow, it still took a long time to undo. In terms of who I'd like to see, I mean, obviously you would like to see the reputable operators who are good on stuff like game integrity. They're not bending regulations. They have responsible gambling policies, etc., etc. So the whole online space has become interesting because essentially what the US being off grid has done is it's created this huge underground economy now, where certain sites are operating presumably illegally in the US, but they're operating from other jurisdictions, so there's very little the US can do about them. We've seen the rise of the apps, which is very much driven by American players playing, and this has been a terrible development for poker in general, because these sites have less protections in place for consumers. Most European law in this area, EU law, is around consumer protection rather than anything else. And the fact that America is effectively off the grid now has allowed sites to some unreputable sites to rise and get very large market shares just by marketing themselves very well to the US. And we talk about GG now. GG have cleaned up their act in recent years, and a lot of that is probably incentivized by wanting to get into the US market, but it still remains that their roots, let's say, and their rapid rise was very much helped by them flouting or even just ignoring a lot of regulation. So you would like to see sites that have played by the rules the whole time be the ones that will ultimately be rewarded, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think they will just literally go with who makes the best pitch, who they think will generate the most revenue for the site, for the states that as they legalize, etc., etc.
Yeah, the amount of GG people I've heard using the phrase white label over the last few months, it seems to have come from the top down, that everyone's been told we're white label now, we're white label, which I guess is their way of trying to make that claim that they're going clean and no longer allowing the VPN stuff, or the agent system is maybe getting wound down. I'm not sure exactly about all of that stuff, but like you said there, they certainly got a leg up over everyone else by continuing to get those players involved under the table, so to speak, in the same way as, I guess, after the UIGA passed in Bush's very last year, for what, 3-4 years, PokerStars and Full Tilt stayed in the space and got a huge leg up, where Party Poker left at that point and they suffered. So it is interesting whether all of these guys, I guess, have blots on their copybook, if you like. So it'd be interesting to see if they get it, or indeed it goes to someone with a sort of an American pitch like WSOP or MGM, as I'm sure they'll come at it from, or do they go with the European sites who've been pretty clean like Unibet, or do they go with the companies that are bigger and have sort of bigger poker reputations, but do have these sort of checkered pasts? Turning
so
to
let me jump in.
Jump in, please, Lon. Yeah.
When you say they, are you talking about individual states? I don't know that you're going to get a U.S.-wide movement. The federal government is doesn't care. Everything nowadays, including reproductive rights, is on to the states. And so I don't think the federal government is going to get involved. Party Poker left on better terms than the other guys did, but I think it's been so long that I don't know that anybody in any legislature remembers what happened, cares about poker, at all. So it's going to be a familiarizing thing where GG, associated very deeply with the World Series of Poker, just opened up, I think, operations in Canada. So maybe some sort of geographical closeness will help them, and individuals legislatures can see what's going on in Canada as a test market, maybe, and it can filter down. I don't know if there's any memory for individual policymakers right now to remember what happened, or they just want to see numbers, I think.
Yeah,
and I don't know. Can that bring enough numbers? Can online poker bring enough numbers for governments to care, do you think, Dara?
Yeah, well, that's the question, and I agree that the actual history doesn't matter so much. It's just with some of the sites, you would still be concerned that behind the scenes they're still breaking regulations, and that they might draw the attention. The way that the DOJ did eventually clamp down on Full Tilt and Stars, and that actually had a seismic effect on the whole poker ecosystem. Like, I think the last thing a legislator wants to do is to give a license to a site which continues to operate in a grey area and break the regulations, and then have somebody, not necessarily the DOJ in this case, but even, the EU might get involved. The EU, as I said, their regulations are all based around consumer protection. And if they decided that a site was operating contrary to the interests of the consumers, they might do a clampdown. So I think that would be what they should concern themselves with more, rather than just, back in 2006, full tilt and stars continued operating when they shouldn't have. I do agree that that's not particularly relevant anymore.
Yeah, no, great points. And I agree with you, Lon, as well, that, it is piecemeal and it's likely to stay piecemeal for the, near future, probably even middle term with America. But at the flip side of that, I would say, is that California is probably the same size as Europe in terms of a market.
Oh, it is.
Even bigger.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's
even just getting into a few key states would be huge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they might.
Yeah. Sorry, just to cut across you there.
Ahead, Dara.
I've looked at it, it's obviously huge, but I don't think it's the same size as Europe. That might be a slight exaggeration. I've heard it's the same size as France, which is the biggest single market in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, for the operators, I think it is the biggest cherry on the tree in California, obviously, with the economy, the number of players and proximity of Vegas and all that. So again, if they can get that state, they're hoping that's like the biggest domino to move forward at that point. But from what I've seen and living here all my life, they're in deep mud. Nobody's moving quickly.
Well, turning now to the big story of this week, hot topic of RTA, real-time assistance is back in the news, prompted this time by a poker trainer's decision to remove its 20-second delay. Odin, the brainchild of Rory Young, launched a sale of its product on the back of this decision, prompting friend of the show, KL Cleaton, to call them out. Matt Berkey also spoke out about this decision and its potential consequences. Those guys ultimately had a podcast together. The major concern is that without a time delay, the trainer can be used as a very effective RTA in real time. Dara, I wrote an article on this during the week. I'm interested to know your thoughts.
Yeah, like this is obviously it's not a news story. It's just that kind of people are starting to slowly realize that it could potentially be used in that way. And not just Odin. I mean, it's unfair to just focus on Odin because they changed their policy recently, but other competing products as well have actually operated for a while without a delay. And it's obviously a concern that people could be using it as RTA. I think there's a couple of things we can say about that, which maybe to allay people's fears. Number one is that the sites, at least the reputable sites, are doing everything they can to find people who are cheating, and it doesn't have to just be the case that they, see the person running something on their computer. They have sophisticated methods of detecting what a normal human plays like and what a human using RTA plays like, and detecting on that basis. So that's the first. The second thing I would say is that I think people are probably overstating the concern for a lot of the economy. Like it's extremely unlikely that people are using this at mid to low stake tournaments, and even if they were, it's not exactly clear how effective that would be, because chip EV simulations are all well and good, and they will be particularly effective in cash games. But in tournaments where ICM warps everything, or PKOs where bounties warp everything, then even if you were using Odin and you were doing exactly what it told you to do in every spot, it wouldn't really give you much of an advantage, because there are spots where we know in satellites you're supposed to fold aces, and Odin would never tell you to fold aces. So there are spots where people would be making mistakes. So I think, at least as far as most players' online experience goes, most people who play tournaments don't play high stakes, and they at the mid stake to low stake level in tournaments, I don't think it's as big as a concern as people think it is. The danger always is that every time this is brought up, it feeds into people's idea that all online poker is rigged, and it's much easier to believe if you're losing online that it's because you're being cheated than just you're not as good as your competition. So it's something which really plays into players' fears, and there's a danger when every time we talk this up, that we just drive people away thinking, oh, it's all cheated. It's interesting that it tends to follow our online poker around and not live poker, and it doesn't matter how many cheating scandals we have in live poker, it never seems to really impact to the point where people think live poker is rigged. But it takes very little to get people thinking, oh, online poker is rigged.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And recently, our friend Phil Galfond put out a video on YouTube talking to that point and talking about why the sites have no interest in dishing out the bad beats and getting rid of people, you know, in the tournament format. But and you're right, it's bad news travels quicker than good news, Dara. And when you have a headline and when you have huge mouthpieces like Daniel Negreanu speaking out on things like that, people hear it. And like we've seen in a lot of politics, you know, they don't have time to read the whole story. They see the headline and they don't see really what the whole story is. But I think anything like that is dangerous to the future of spreading online poker in the US, David.
Yeah, great point. One thing we can, however, like Dara's made some great points there about the unlikelihood of it being used in low to mid stakes and tournaments. It's you know, where it's not effective. I think that's absolutely right. But RTA has become much more prevalent in high stakes online games over the past couple of years. That does seem to be true. And I'm interested, Lon, there's a debate raging right now about whose responsibility that ultimately is. These software manufacturers could argue that there's no onus on them to do anything other than create the best piece of kit possible with the least amount of delay possible. After that, then it's up to the sites to police the software's use if it's maybe being deployed as a cheating device. For example, Dominic Nietzsche said to me, ultimately, I believe the real responsibility when it comes to catching RTA users lies with the poker sites. We are paying sites millions in rake, yet the security somehow gets a pass for being unable to detect the most basic and obvious forms of cheating. Now, Dara's made the point there that, you know, actually the sites do have quite sophisticated methods. And actually, we're planning a future show with a good friend of ours, Bardal, who worked in poker security and was very much involved in those kinds of things. It's probably limited what he can tell us specifically, because obviously there's tricks to the trade that need to remain secret. But we are keen to hear what he says, because it will offer a better counterbalance. But I'm interested, like, when you hear something like that, Lon, do you feel like, oh yeah, well, if someone's just making software, why not just make it as good as you can, and then it's the site's problem? Or is there a moral responsibility there?
Oh, I think there's a moral responsibility on anybody involved to call this out if they see it. And I mean, poker has so many opportunities for immoral behavior, but with any gaming site, with any game, the people involved have a responsibility for maybe not policing it in 100% of the cases, or the essence of the word, but not ignoring it. Yes, there is a moral responsibility. And Dominic, it was interesting in your article, which was, as usual, very well written. I don't know why you don't write novels, you know, that he said, and I don't think it matters, the point you brought out for Dominic, that it's not a very good software. I think he was saying, you know, yeah. And so it's, you know, don't worry about it. I think we all have to worry about it, because, you know, I think the first ever securities trade in U.S. stock market was before 1800. The Securities and Exchange Commission didn't come into being till 1934. So there was a lot going on before that forced that to happen. So I think we're kind of in that mode where don't underestimate the criminal element. You know, they're always going to try to find a way to be immoral, and ultimately the sites have a huge interest in policing it and getting the technology to detect it, because if their site can be trusted, nobody's going to play on their site, or not enough to appease them and their, you know, people in the corner offices. So it's in everybody's best interest, and it's a tough thing to do, to try to find all this. But in order for the game to move forward, for the players to move forward and be competent, they have to police their site, I think.
Yeah, Dara, I want to bring you in here to lay out the sort of other side of it, I guess. The immorality, I suppose, of softwares not building in feature mechanisms which can stop them being used in real time. Those kinds of things take the form of short delays that are longer than time banks, or other features which monitor the timestamp signature of the imported hand, matching it to the timestamp of when the hand's being uploaded. Obviously, you can see why that would work. And I think in those situations with some of those softwares, it triggers a sort of a, we're not going to, generate this solution for you, which is obviously a very good built-in mechanism. But Dom's other point is that there are other features in various products that can be used to cheat in a much more effective manner, yet no one would call them out. And Max Silver actually spoke, sort of echoing that, but also pointing to how it's not a new problem. He was pithy. He said, for everyone freaking out about RTA killing poker, don't worry. Cheaters have had access to this stuff privately for ages, so you're already fucked. What would you say to that?
Yeah, like it has been an open secret, obviously, that some players have had access to this sort of stuff. Now, that requires them to put a large amount of investment in, but the rewards are there if they do it. What's different now is that you have these database tools which are available to everybody for a relatively modest monthly subscription, and the fear is that will drive up the cheating further. I think Dom is right that, like, I think it's a little bit unfair to pick on the makers of these products and say, well, this could be used for cheating, so you're immoral doing this product. It's like, there are lots of products that can be used to do illegal and immoral things with, but that doesn't mean that the product developer is doing something illegal or immoral developing that product. I do agree with Dom that the onus is on the sites, because they have the biggest incentive. Their incentive is to keep the game fair, to keep people coming back onto their playing on their site, and to make sure that their customers aren't cheated. So really, that's where the focus of attention should be. Now, again, coming back to the reason why I think it's all overstated is that if it was a massive problem, I think we would have seen a huge rise of just completely new players coming from nowhere and crushing. And we haven't seen that. We have seen pretty much what we've seen over the course of online poker. People rise to the stakes at fairly slow levels, and few of them get to the higher stakes. And in fact, a lot of the guys who have been caught in the past, it's the speed of their rise which actually made them suspicious in the first place. Fedor Cruz, who was actually a Natural 8 ambassador, I believe, it was the speed where he went from playing sort of like low stakes to high stakes that people went, wait a minute, how is this even possible? Same was true of Ali Imsirovic. Ali's rise was meteoric, and that was really what raised red flags about him. The fact that there aren't like hundreds and hundreds of other people that were going like, where did they come from and how are they suddenly so good and why are they crushing, makes me think that this is probably not a problem as we think. And I think that is mostly down to the fact that, as I said, using Odin or GTO Wizard or any of the other products in online tournaments is not going to make you rich very quickly.
And Dara, just to kind of open up the point a little bit about, you were saying, and I believe you, it's more of a problem at the high stakes, which is, quick question, how much of the high stakes, what percentage of that of the poker world? I mean, is that 1% maybe?
Yeah, it's probably in that region for sure. Yeah, it's the most visible part, but it's really just a tiny part of the ecosystem.
Exactly. I think it is a lot of it could be a PR problem, like you mentioned, and I think from a humanistic standpoint, you can't blame the maker. I mean, you're right. So many things can be used for deadly devices. You can't stop pens from being jabbed into people, but. So do you think now...
Just to jump in quickly there, Lon, because I do accept that a pen could be used to stab somebody, but its purpose isn't to stab somebody. If something's... Okay. One of its functions is obviously, in this case, to coach people, but a very obvious other function could be to cheat, then it's probably more analogous to a gun.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Absolutely. And I was thinking about that. I didn't know what example Dara might use, but yeah, you're right,
yeah, very right. But even if it is more analogous to a gun, like, are we saying that all gun manufacturers are immoral because they're making something which kills people?
No, exactly. I think that's where the debate should be. Like, I agree with you, and I think that's really complicated. And I can imagine it was where, like, guns don't kill people, people kill people, and it'll be but software doesn't cheat, people cheat. It's.
But I think the debate around guns is always how much gun control there should be, and certainly in Europe it's accepted that the way you you police that is you just put gun regulations and gun control in place, not that you slap fines or you ostracize gun manufacturers for making their product.
So do you think that what I was getting to about the 1% of the high stakes players, do you think it, and it seems to be happening, more of the onus should be on that high stakes group of players in addition to the sites? I mean, they seem to try to police themselves pretty well. They're a small, group, and they know each other, and sometimes they go off a little unhinged, as we've seen, but does it need to go to more the players than if it were a larger market of affected players, do you think?
Yeah, no, I do think it's definitely helpful if that community self-polices. Obviously, the danger with this, and I always go back to the analogy of my former world, athletics, is that in athletics, every time a drug cheat is caught, unfortunately, the message the general public tends to take from that is not, oh, that's great, they're catching cheats, they're out cheating in the sport. It's, oh my God, there's cheating in athletics, they're probably all juicing. And there is a danger that every time a new cheating scandal comes out, it does just feed that narrative that all poker players are cheats, which clearly is not true. It's probably not even 1% of 1% in terms of who's cheating, but that tends to be the message that people get from that. So it's a complex issue, because obviously it's good that they're self-policing, but I think a lot of the shouting and hyperbole that you get thrown around on social media about it actually just exacerbates the image problem that poker has.
Well, speaking of self-policing, a few days ago, Daniel Negreanu made new allegations of online cheating against Ali Imsirovic, who, as we all know, has been banned from multiple live and online poker operators for his illicit behavior. Negreanu tweeted, "All operators, both online and live, should proactively ban him indefinitely. He is the opposite of remorseful and is actually boastful, bragging about robbing former friends." Lon, what did you think when you first heard the story of Ali and Jake Schindler's behavior? And what did you make of these new allegations in the last few days?
Well, how big is a grain of salt when I hear Daniel Negreanu talk? I don't know, I take a mountain of salt with what I hear from Daniel. That being said, obviously he is an insider and he knows these people and he knows the game. He does have a tendency to go off uncocked, half-cocked, full-cocked, and I don't mean that literally from the pictures by the pool. It's just
dear. I was wondering if you were going somewhere. I didn't realize you were going there. Okay.
No, it's again, the loud mouthpiece, and Dara just referred to it, that you have a small part of the small community, and you hear something and it tends to wash over the whole community, no matter how big or how small. It was unfortunate. And even if it's true, I think Daniel does tend to go black and white, on things when he hears a little info. And from what I understand, from what I've read, Daniel heard about this happening. But again, there's a lot of inside knowledge. Alex Foxton saying the same thing. He can't reveal sources, but he knows that is happening 100%. So it's a dangerous thing when they start policing themselves. I'm never surprised to hear about, cheating in these situations when there's big money. It doesn't have to be poker. It could be anything with big money. There are going to be elements that are going to be trying to take that money illicitly. And it's unfortunate, but we have to, keep hearing who's banging on the door illegally, and it's going to happen. It's just part of the game, part of life.
Well, you're very wise to have the mountain of salt nearby, because we even on this show are very familiar. We apparently rigged the 2019 GPI awards while sitting at home in Europe, not even out there, not even involved. We apparently had orchestrated a fix because Daniel had heard something on that occasion. But look, let's that aside, ancient history. I did find it interesting how Ali's cheating had been rumored for a long time. Go back, more than 2 years almost. But it was only after Alex Foxton, self-policing, spoke out, accusing him, that he became a persona non grata. He became, the person he's seen as these days in the industry. We have a similar accusation now by another prominent person in the community, maybe Fox and jumping in as well. The implication now being that he's still not only playing online under fake names, but he's also still multi-accounting. Dara, how careful do people reporting on this need to be? Because I get the impression that people feel like he's guilty now so they can say whatever they want. By that, I don't mean that he should be defended, and I'm not trying to defend him here. But what I mean is, should we, other people in the media, and also like the more likely to go off on Twitter, peers of his, be a bit more delicate and careful about, you know, what they say and the process by which they tweet out or make allegations?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. I think they should. Like, I don't think the case has been proven against him. Like, these whisperings about him have been there almost from the start of his career. You know, we've interviewed people on this show who afterwards, off the record, have told us that they believed he was cheating and that was responsible for his meteoric rise. So that has always been out there, but it has kind of gone from whispering to sort of generally accepted truth without any actual proof being delivered. And that's the danger now, that we are just going to presume people are guilty and then everybody's just going to accept that they're guilty, which is, you know, we're back to a sort of a mob mentality then. I do have a large mountain of salt beside me too every time Daniel talks on this, because, you know, like, again, with Daniel and Gigi, it just feels that it's all about the optics rather than the actual reality. And they're trying to, what was that phrase you used earlier, white label themselves and appear squeaky clean, and, you know, oh, we're doing everything we can to root out cheats. You know, the online sites have always tried to catch cheats and have done it, but they don't shout about it, because it's actually counterproductive to shout about it or to talk about your methods, because then you're essentially tipping off the cheaters as to how they're getting caught. So sites like, you know, Unibet, or to give somebody that we're not sponsored by credit, PokerStars have very much led the sort of game integrity and done everything they can to try and make sure that people aren't being cheated. And that's the process of doing that is sort of behind closed doors, using sophisticated detection methods and then catching people and then refunding the money to the people that they believe are cheating. It's not a sort of a publicity gimmick like a player integrity council, where a bunch of well-known players, all associated with GG, by the way, get together and decide, oh, we think Ali's cheating, so Ali should be banned everywhere. That just feels like completely the wrong way to go about it. And it's more to do with a site which has some reputational issues in their past, trying to now appear that they're sort of the white knights who are riding in to save poker from cheaters.
Well, finally on this, Lon, I wanted to ask you, you've obviously been in the industry longer than either Dara or I. We listened to your coverage for years, long before
we played. Thank you. How long? When you were little kids, probably, right?
Wait, I wasn't trying to make you like a dinosaur or relic. Apologies. But I suppose what I was trying to get at was that, like, poker has emerged, if you like, from the kind of gloop of cowboys, maybe, you know, getting out of town, gunslinging, making sure they got their money before they, you know, had the people they took it off, take it back off them, to a kind of a nascent industry which had no regulation, was very much the Wild West in a way, to loads of scandals down the years involving both operators and individuals, and unfortunately individuals who had access to the backroom stuff of operators, one of the bigger scandals and things like that. So take it in a kind of a context. When you see a story like Ali and Jake, or the rumors around Bryn Kenny, which I guess are probably the three big ones this year, obviously the silliness that went around the Robbie Jake Lou stuff, bit of a sideshow, really kind of annoying that got attention when there's
leading right to
ones.
A GPI award, right?
but I'm interested when you look at the, like, 20 years or whatever, and would you say that we're getting better? Like, is there any meaningful improvement in the way we either self-police or regulate, or the sites operate, or governments get involved?
Yes, I think we are better, more sophisticated from the player standpoint, and from the technology, and from how they run live games and live tournaments. Again, how can I, like Europe, you go to Europe and you see buildings that are in use that are older than the United States. So we're still having growing pains. Poker has only been in the public eye for what, 25 years, maybe not even 25 years. And so it's a rapid growth to where it was and to where it is now. And there's going to be growing pains. It's like any company that's going to build itself to this monumental size in that period of time. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. I think poker is still kind of a startup company. They're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. There's a lot of other companies that are trying to mimic it, and who is best for the consumers out there. And it's still a sifting process, I think. And the weird thing is, from our perspective, and you've been around most of the poker boom, is that because we've been there from that beginning of the poker boom, that we've seen the whole arc, and we feel, oh God, we've been here for 20 years. But you read the history books and go, well, yeah, the first 10% of poker's life, it had some growing pains, but now it's perfect. So I think the history books will read this as a growing pains, as a learning process, and as a normal stumbling pitfall process of any type of operation. And we're just happen to live it, and we're right in the moment. And so it seems to be taking longer and more frustrating. So I think it's pretty normal.
That's good. I'm glad we had a slightly more hopeful note to end that one on. A quick results roundup now before we go.
I want to ring. Did you get that in? I want to ring.
You do know. I think we did mention that, but we'll mention it again one more time. I promise.
Okay.
Two former guests of the show were in the news this week. Philip Gruesome has announced himself back after a period of apparent sabbatical. He won the GG Masters Overlay Edition for 800k a few days ago. Also in the news, just in the last couple of days, was Jason Kuhn, who won a record 5th Triton event at their festival in Vietnam. Congratulations to both of those lads. Finally, in Unibet news, the Spring Poker Championship main event is this Sunday. It's a 35k guarantee, 100 quid buy-in, 2-day event, and there's a full schedule of other games around it to build your session. At the time of recording, a player with the initials SL, and I'm sorry, not DO, Dara, is leading the high and overall leaderboard, but there's still plenty of points up for grabs, so maybe a late surge is on the cards. A quick shout out, I wanted to do this one for the man who goes by the Twitter handle Bud PLO, who won our PLO main event on Wednesday night. Our tournament manager, Andy Payton, was very worried that this one was going to overlay. So he asked Dara and I to do a last minute promotional campaign, and it ended up smashing its guarantee. And the guy who won it actually did a lovely tweet saying how he spotted our salacious promoing. I don't know, maybe I don't know if that's the right word, Dara, but it was there was threats of nudity anyway in there, and threats of nudity, and anyway that helped him spot it, and he ended up winning the event. So we're very happy for him. Before we go, Lon, WSOP ring winner Lon,
thank you.
You have a new show that you told me off air. You can't say much about, but maybe, just maybe, you could tease us with.
Yeah, I was contacted by Todd Anderson, who created Poker Night in America and Heartland Poker Tour, and he's got a new concept that he wants to bring forward in Las Vegas. So looks I'll be heading to Vegas probably a day or two every week for a while. It's a cash game setting but in a little different setting, as it were. And we got some really good people involved. I'm not supposed to say too much, but my new TV partner, I think, if he doesn't listen, Phil Galfond. So we've got a good lineup and some other people, and it's going to be probably a month away or so that we're working on that. So I'm really excited to do something outside WSOP and show people that I don't know anything about cash games either.
Well, you heard it here first, or did they hear it here first? I don't know.
No, I asked Todd if I can say anything. He says, not announced, we're going to announce it later. So just try to keep it on the down low, but I probably said too much already.
Well, great friend of the show, Todd Anderson. He was actually on our very first episode when we came back on the air after our lengthy enough sabbatical between seasons 1 and 2. And I want to give a shout out to him, actually, now that you give me the opportunity. A lot of the poker content creators who make the sort of the fancier programs get a little bit shitty when you threaten to brush up against any kind of copyright or what they would infer as copyright infringement on the YouTubes or when we're making our strategy segments or whatever. Big exception to that rule is Poker Night in America and Todd Anderson, who's always been very good to us here on the show, always been very happy to give us clips of his episodes if we wanted to use them. So we do appreciate him, and we wish you all the best with that venture. It sounds very exciting.
Oh, thank you very much. I've known Todd for a long time, and like you said, he's good people, and hopefully we'll see a lot of clips on your shows. And before we do sign up, I think what you guys do is fabulous, and you know, you're some of the smartest minds in the world and poker, and I really
just don't mind off poker, mate. Just leave it. I'm gonna find a way to put that last bit out.
Yeah.
No, but thank you very much. I appreciate you guys are keeping it real, and that's really nice.
I really appreciate you saying that. It remains for me to thank you, our special guest, Lon McEachern. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here. Happy to see you guys again. You both look well. Get a haircut, Dara.
And Dara, thank you as always.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who watches. And if you do want me to get a haircut, the best way to do that is to like this video when you watch it.
Oh, I love it. We had a meeting about 3 days ago. Dara had been chatting with Kevin Martin, and Kevin was saying we don't chill enough the like and subscribe hit buttons. So I love how you just snuck that one in there, Dara. It's beautifully done.
Vote now.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Cheers.